A little bit of Neville. The great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention firmly and repeatedly focused on the object to be accomplished. It cannot be emphasized too much that by creating an ideal within your mental sphere, by assuming that you are already that ideal, you identify yourself with it and thereby transform yourself into its image. Thinking from the ideal instead of thinking of the ideal. Thinking from the ideal instead of thinking of the ideal. Every state is already there as mere possibilities, as long as we think of them, but as overpoweringly real when we think from them. This was called by the ancient teachers subjection to the will of God, or resting in the Lord. And the only true test of resting in the Lord is that all who do rest are inevitably transformed into the image of that in which they rest. You become according to your resigned will, and your resigned will is your concept of yourself and all that you consent to and accept as true. You, assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled and continuing therein, take upon yourself the results of that state. Not assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are ever free of the results. The truth that sets you free is that you can experience in imagination what you desire to experience in reality, and by maintaining this experience in imagination, your desire will and must become an actuality. Again, the truth that sets you free is that you can experience in your imagination what you desire to experience in reality. And by maintaining this experience in imagination, your desire will become an actuality. Now, all I can say to you about that is that it really works. The first part of this is the power of your imagination. The second part of what I'm speaking about here is thinking from the end. The third concept, after thinking from the end, is these words. If you're taking notes, I want you to really have them underlined. These are the words that Neville has spoken that really resonated with me. He said, you must learn to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Whatever it is that you have in your imagination, this is the only tool that you have for bringing it into real, for hardening it from a thought to perhaps first an image, and then a condition, and then a event, and then an object. That your imagination is the only place that you can make all of this happen. If it's the weight that you want to lose, if it's the addiction that you want to overcome, if it's the relationship you'd like to fix, whatever it is you'd like to create, he gives some very specific examples of how this can work. Assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled means that in your imagination, you have created what it is, what you have imagined for yourself. You think now from that end rather than about that end. And now you assume the feeling of that wish being fulfilled. And where do you experience feelings? In your body. That's what the body is. It's the reservoir of feelings. They show up in your flushing. They show up when you get embarrassed. They show up when you get joyful. They show up when you get sad. You know, you have physical manifestations of feelings. You assume the feeling of this wish being fulfilled. So what does it feel like within you to have this thing materialize? He makes a big case for creation itself, that you have really no control over the details. And you don't get to be a part of creation, he says, because creation is already complete. What you get to decide is what aspect of creation is going to manifest or materialize or show up into your life. That's what you get to do. You don't get to go out there and make mosquitoes or create flowers and all. All of that is being done by the great invisible Tao. What you get to decide is what extent of what is already being created and is part of creation that you are participating in, what share of it is going to manifest and be a part of your life. And you do this through the assumption of a feeling of a wish fulfilled, so that you imagine what it is that you would like to have or to be or to manifest, and you imagine this for yourself, and then what you do is you feel it in your body. And you ask yourself, what does it feel like? And everything about you has to go to this place. I'm going to read to you a little excerpt from Neville about this. I will be, in quotes, is a confession that I am not. Okay? I will be is simply a confession that I am not. The Father's will, God's will, is always I am. Until you realize that you are the Father, that you are God, and that there is only one I am, and your infinite self is that I am, your will is always I will be. That's your will. In the law of assumption, your consciousness of being is the Father's will. The mere wish without this consciousness is my will. This great quotation, so little understood, is a perfect statement of the law of assumption. I will be is a confession that I am not. If you change your concept of yourself, the events ahead of you in time are altered. You can alter events ahead of you. Greg Braden wrote about this in The Isaiah Effect. I'd recommend you read that. If you change your concept of yourself, the events ahead of you in time are altered. But thus altered, they form again a deterministic sequence, starting from the moment of this changed concept. You are a being with powers of intervention which enable you, by a change of consciousness, to alter the course of observed events. In fact, to change your future. Deny the evidence of the senses and assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Again, deny the evidence of the senses, everything that your eyes and ears and everything else tells you. Go to your imagination, think from the end, and assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Inasmuch as your assumption is creative and forms an atmosphere, your assumption, if it is to be a noble one, that is, if it's aligned with God, increases your assurance and helps you to reach a higher level of being.